Anthem. 9 years in the making. A title many were hyped for after an E3 demo in 2017 had just 2 short years on the market before being shut down in 2021. This title showed such promise and displayed BioWare's courage to try something new. After amassing success with story-rich single-player experiences, the studio were eager to try and build something fresh. A multiplayer cooperative experience unlike anything seen at the time. But after a development plagued with problems, no clear direction for the title, and a completely botched launch, this game was destined for failure right from the start. But how did Anthem get here? What was the tragic story behind the shutdown of this title? This is the failure of Anthem. The idea for Anthem began in 2012, right after the release of Mass Effect 3. Being developed by BioWare, the game's aim was to diverge the studio away from the Mass Effect and Dragon Age franchises. Initially, BioWare did not have strong concepts behind Anthem, but the exosuit idea was developed fairly early on. The concept would have players with Iron Man-like exosuits to assist with survival on a planet of hazardous environments and dangerous creatures. The early concept of Anthem was vastly different to what was released in 2019, with it being a mission-driven survival game over a loot shooter. The initial gameplay loop consisted of players teaming up to tackle cooperative missions, fighting to and from places and collecting resources to upgrade their exosuits. BioWare would then trigger world events to spice up player situations, keeping them invested in the universe. For the most part, this was the state of the game up until 2014, where the idea behind the project was briefly introduced to the masses at E3 2014, with a short conceptual video describing what this new IP would look like. Nobody knew the game title nor what the project was actually like, and BioWare had many elements to consider. In the early days of development, the team were worried with the scalability of this concept, as well as the technical capabilities of the Frostbite engine, and from here, things would only get tougher for BioWare. In August 2014, Casey Hudson opted to leave the team of BioWare Edmonton, believing that Anthem had enough foundation to continue on a positive course. Hudson supervised the development of Anthem and would keep the entire team on point during development. However, his departure from BioWare caused concern amongst some of the team, as his leadership was imperative during the development of the Mass Effect games. It would seem that the team members' concerns would then be validated, as BioWare struggled to scale the game, negatively impacting other aspects of development. Not only this, but developing Anthem with the Frostbite engine proved troublesome for BioWare, as EA's management pressed for uniformity of the technology studios under the company would use. In this case, many developers were, let's say, encouraged to use Frostbite. Frostbite was not developed for games like Anthem in mind, and ultimately BioWare would scrap numerous gameplay elements such as survival and crafting as a result. Simply put, the team could not transition these systems over to Frostbite. Further disaster struck as those familiar with the engine in BioWare were moved to support the development of FIFA in 2016 as the franchise transitioned to Frostbite, leaving few members of BioWare familiar with an engine they've been ultimately forced to use. After 4 years of development, members of the team expressed concerns that Anthem was nowhere near the final production stages, with poor management being detrimental to the game. Despite BioWare's attempts to distance themselves from Bungie's destiny, elements of the game weaved themselves into Anthem, particularly the loot shooter aspect, as BioWare understood that Bungie had refined these elements greatly. Anthem would undergo several major changes nearing its release. Numerous key events forced BioWare's hand in the game's final design. As tradition at BioWare, the team would provide demos of their current projects for staff to play and test over the Christmas holidays. In 2016, it was Anthem's turn. This demo reached Patrick Sutherland, who at the time was the chief design officer at EA. Sutherland was unimpressed with this demo, expressing concerns about the sheer contrast between the 2014 reveal and the current state of the title. BioWare were ordered to create a new demo in anticipation of E3 and had 6 weeks to impress Sutherland. The team feared that if the demo was a bust, the game would ultimately be shelved. The studio pulled all their best cards to impress Sutherland, reintroducing the fly mechanic added and removed several times during development. Sutherland was particularly impressed with this mechanic, which would go on to be a notable element during Anthem's E3 2017 gameplay trailer, to which point the game's trademark was secured: Anthem. During development, the game was internally known as Dylan and externally known as Beyond. However, securing the trademark Beyond proved troublesome, and instead BioWare settled on a backup name, Anthem. Anthem's development was continuously sabotaged, as the rough launch of Mass Effect Andromeda in March 2017 by BioWare Montreal forced BioWare staff to dedicate time resolving launch issues. The failure of Mass Effect Andromeda resulted in the closure of BioWare Montreal, who were then absorbed by EA Motive. Consequently, eyes were on Anthem to maintain a high level of quality in comparison. But how did a game with such a strained development fare? With tensions rising between BioWare's Austin and Edmonton teams due to a lack of concrete decisions over gameplay elements, things were just getting worse. However, not all was so bleak for the team, as Anthem's gameplay demo in E3 2017 was met with generally positive views on the title. The flying aspect was a particular note for many, being called an Iron Man simulator. Graphically, the game looked stunning at the time, with many people praising the look and feel of the game world. Of course, some people were skeptical about the title, but remained optimistic that BioWare could pull off something fantastic here. But gameplay demos can be deceiving, and some people saw through this deception. Whilst many people were hyped for the prospect of Anthem, some players have been burned one too many times with illegitimate gameplay trailers. Others just weren't impressed with the title as a whole, as it seemed to be somewhat of a Destiny clone. Many people wanted to avoid the grindy nature of games like Destiny and The Division. People wanted something more from Anthem, something better, especially when this is BioWare, who were famously known for their exceptional single-player, story-rich experiences. Mid-2017, further disaster struck BioWare as several members of the studio departed, and tragically, Corey Gasper, one of the lead gameplay designers of Anthem, suddenly passed away. As a result of this, the project continued to fall further behind schedule. BioWare, aware of the dire situation, asked EA to delay the game past March 2019, to which EA would seal Anthem's fate and refuse.
But the rest of the bones of the game just aren't there yet.
The flashy combat and mechanically rich bosses still have a long way to go in terms of polish, variety, and balance.
The launch of Anthem in February 2019 was notoriously bad, receiving mixed reviews amongst critics. GameSpot stated the game had good ideas but struggles with its execution, and some were more critical of the title, stating the game was ultimately flawed and very unfinished. Despite this, the combat system was praised by many, and the flying system was noted as a favourable experience once again. From day one, Anthem was plagued with bugs, ranging from minor annoyances to game-breaking. Not only this, the game was prone to excessive crashing, but it wasn't just the game crashing, it was the entire console crashing. It was even reported that Anthem was completely bricking PlayStation 4 consoles, rendering them very expensive paperweights. However, these claims seem to be debunked, as this problem was easily rectified by rebooting the system into safe mode. It appears this confusion arose whilst Anthem was randomly turning off PlayStation 4 consoles during gameplay. But this wasn't just linked to Anthem, as PS4 shutdowns were purely circumstantial due to a multitude of factors, including ambient temperature, ventilation, and more. Anthem did miss sales expectations, as EA predicted to sell 6 million copies by the end of March, which just was not feasible with the game's current state. The poor launch of Anthem would go on to be addressed by EA's CEO, Andrew Wilson, who recognised the game had not reached the expectations EA had, although EA and BioWare would remain committed to the project. It was analysed that the game split the players into two categories: those who are a fan of BioWare and their story-heavy content, and those who adore action-adventure games. It's clear that the target audience of this title varied heavily. Wilson had confidence in BioWare's ability to evolve the title to unify the player base, and following this, BioWare would release Anthem's first post-launch content update titled Cataclysms in August 2019, as part of a 3-step plan taking place over numerous weeks. This update was delayed several months and ultimately proved futile, as BioWare abandoned this idea in favour of delivering seasonal updates to combat the core gameplay issues plaguing Anthem. The first seasonal content patch launched in October 2019, drawing comparisons to Cataclysms. Following this would be nothing but a blog post in February 2020, with BioWare announcing the end of seasonal updates as they look to reinvent the core gameplay. However, a recent global event likely caused progress to slow to a halt, and with EA and BioWare executives due to review Anthem's rework in less than a year, it was safe to say the project was on borrowed time. February 24th, 2021. BioWare announced they would cease development on Anthem, but would continue to support the live servers for the immediate future, effectively meaning the game was shutting down. This news came a mere 2 years after the title's release. A game, 9 years in the making, abandoned after 2 years of failure. A project developers poured so much hard work into, gone. Now begs the question, why did this game fail? If a developer like BioWare had 9 years to build this project, why was the launch notoriously bad? after the departure of Hudson from BioWare, it was documented that the studio began to struggle scaling the concept of Anthem. Even after Hudson's eventual return to BioWare as project lead of Anthem in 2017, there just wasn't enough time to set the course right for this game. Not only this, but a generally troublesome development didn't paint a hopeful future for this title. EA's push for tool uniformity within their studios was detrimental to this project, bottlenecking development and stripping games of their core components because Frostbite is not a one-size-fits-all versatile engine. Following a troubled development, many BioWare veterans left the company whilst Anthem was being created. Furthermore, BioWare struggled to pick a direction for the game, often completely changing its identity during development, stripping and reintroducing mechanics again and again. This lack of decision making when developing core gameplay elements proved detrimental to Anthem, and reportedly, the game we got was made within a year prior to release. It's clear that the title was in dire need of more time in the oven, and with EA's refusal to allow for more time for the developers to cook up something great under the leadership of Hudson, the game was sabotaged by EA into failure. Finally, there was no unique selling point in comparison with other games as a service titles. With Destiny 2 having almost a 2-year head start and Bungie paving the way for games as a service, Anthem just couldn't compete with a game that ultimately just does it better. All this sadly results in this video today. The failure of Anthem. I vaguely remember people I know being optimistic for this title, but honestly, I really didn't see the appeal. The game looked okay, but nothing breathtaking. However, I did not envision this game becoming an absolute failure in just 2 years after the release. I'm curious, were you hyped for this game? Tell me, did you end up playing Anthem? What was your experience like? Did you enjoy it? Where did you feel BioWare went wrong with this title? And did you imagine the game would be discontinued after just 2 short years of being on the market? Tell me in the comments below, I'm excited to read them. Thanks for sitting through this video. InfoNow has just hit the massive milestone of 1,000 subscribers, so I just want to express my deepest gratitude to those who've decided to subscribe. Did you know that 98.8% of people who watch my videos aren't subscribed to the channel? So if you want to join the top 2%, be sure to press the subscribe button right after you leave a like on this video. Here on the channel, we document game development stories, be them successes or failures. If that piques your interest, you can watch the failure of Dead Realm or watch the rise of No Man's Sky by clicking one of the 2 end screen cards now.